Everybody laughed at Jaguar, right? They called her crazy. They said she was bitter. They said she was reaching. But now, with the federal files dropping and millions of documents hitting the public, people aren't laughing so much anymore. This whole thing started when names from the Epstein files began surfacing again. Big names, powerful names. And Jaguar has been saying for years that the entertainment world and the billionaire class are deeply connected and incredibly messed up. Now it seems she's been validated. There's one thing in particular Jaguar has pointed out in the wake of these file releases, and those are the similarities between Epstein and Sean Combs, known to the world as Diddy. She says people are missing the point.
In time to talk about Epstein and to talk about Diddy and to not see them as the same situation. Like, there's so many intersections between Epstein and Diddy that we're not even paying attention to. And people who were regulars in the Epstein crew.
Epstein operated with wealth, influence, private planes, and elite circles. Diddy operated in music, fashion, and Hollywood power rooms. Jaguar's argument is that Diddy wasn't some isolated figure. He was part of a larger ecosystem. And if Epstein was protected for years, who else was protected?
I'm still shocked that there's nothing about Naomi Campbell really coming forward yet. I'm surprised. I'm like bitterly surprised. Her time.
Yeah, they said her name was on the list like the most as far as like flight records.
Yeah.
She was on a lot of flights.
A lot of flights.
You mentioned
also Diddy's ex-girlfriend.
Hey.
Isn't that funny? What a small world.
That doesn't automatically prove wrongdoing, but it raises questions. And Jaguar says the silence around certain names is telling. Why are some people front page news while others barely get mentioned?
When you see there's some people on the list that is no longer with us. David Stern, the NBA commissioner, he's no longer with us. Michael Jackson, his name was
on
this list.
Odd. That was odd too. Chris Tucker showed up. Like a lot of people showed up. But the funny thing is it's who they're putting up, what they're pushing forward, what they're holding back on. The Sean Carter references, the Jay-Z references are very interesting on so many levels. Because it's being mentioned from different foyers, like from different aspects.
Sometimes a name appears because of contact information or social proximity, but the web of connections is massive, and that's what makes this bigger than one man. Elon Musk was rumored to have ties mentioned in the broader conversations around the files. Bill Gates has already admitted meeting Epstein in the past.
Bill Gates, there's a draft email in the documents that Epstein was apparently writing to himself back in July of 2013, and in it he addressed Bill Gates, accusing him of recently disregarding their friendship or whatever twisted relationship they had. He also mentioned Gates allegedly asking him to delete some past communications. And when it's past communications with Jeffrey Epstein, the reason why you'd want them to be deleted is easy to speculate about. Here is from the draft email, this section. To add insult to the injury, them implore me to please delete the emails regarding your STD, your request that I provide you antibiotics that you can surreptitiously give to Melinda, and the description of your penis. And so sometimes these emails are hard to understand or to follow from Jeffrey Epstein because he wrote like an absolute illiterate madman. I don't know entirely why one of the richest men in the world would need antibiotics to be provided by Jeffrey Epstein.
I do.
Okay, well, they're referencing something there. There was also a draft email that Epstein appeared to be writing on behalf of Gates' longtime science advisor, Boris Nikolic, about his intent to leave the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This is from July of 2013. Epstein wrote in his voice, by the way, for this. During the past few weeks, I have been caught up in a severe marital dispute between Melinda and Bill. In my role as his right hand, I have been asked on multiple occasions and in hindsight wrongly acquiesced into participating in things that have ranged from the morally inappropriate to the ethically unsound, and have been repeatedly asked to do other things that get near and potentially over the line into the illegal. From helping Bill to get drugs in order to deal with consequences of with Russian girls, to facilitating his illicit trysts with married women, to being asked to provide Adderall for bridge tournaments, I feel I owe it to my friends and future colleagues to admit a moral failure, to ask forgiveness, and to move on with my life.
This was not an accident. This was not like, oh, golly gee, here's the wild guy. Oh, Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, yeah, he's the pedo that all the powerful people randomly know about and like and constantly go to. And he writes blackmail emails to them. And he brags about how he's constantly helping the Israelis with their spies and their ex-presidents. And we can't put 2 and 2 together? No, I put it together, it's 4. So mainstream media can tell you it's 5 or 0, but they're giant liars. Epstein was clearly part of Israel's operations here, and they're clearly were trying to blackmail the most powerful people in the country.
These aren't small-time figures. These are billionaires, global influencers, men whose decisions shape economies. And that's the point. When you're dealing with that level of power, Jaguar argues, you're not dealing with normal rules anymore. Then there's perhaps the biggest mystery of all, Epstein's death. Officially, he died by suicide in jail. But the missing surveillance footage, the malfunctioning cameras, the guards who allegedly fell asleep, the story never sat right with people. In fact, one inmate who spent time in the same prison said there is no way Epstein should have been able to take his life.
Okay, I'm joined now by someone, and this is interesting, with intimate knowledge of the very jail cell Epstein died in. Michael Francis, he was a capo for the Colombo crime family in the 1980s. He served time in the exact cell where Epstein was later held. Michael, welcome back to the program. Tell us about that cell, and what do you make of these revelations that there is a minute missing from the surveillance video, Michael?
Well, listen, I spent 7 months on that tier and in those cells. And the first thing I have to say, there's no way you are able to commit suicide. There's just no way. There's no way to hang yourself. There's nothing from the ceiling. There's nothing from the bed. You'd have to be a midget and work really hard to try to hang yourself. And I don't think you can accomplish it at that point. As far as the cameras being off, I haven't experienced that. I did 8 years in prison. And I haven't experienced cameras being broken in the perfect storm of correctional officers not walking those cells. They walk in and they look in on you all the time. As a matter of fact, sometimes it's embarrassing to go to the toilet because they're walking past you and looking in the cell constantly. So I've said this from day one. I do not believe it was suicide. I can't talk about what happened to him, but I don't believe it was a suicide, because you just couldn't physically do it. It would be almost impossible to do it. So that's number one.
It must be interesting, Michael, when you look at the video, though, it must be interesting because you know the area. I mean, we all look at this and it just looks like a prison, but this must look very familiar to you.
Absolutely, very familiar. And the fact that a minute is missing, look, everything around this guy, I just did a very deep dive into him, which I'll be releasing on my platform in the next several days. Look, there's no way that this person operated alone. Look, they have the videos. Alan Dershowitz recently said that he saw the client list, but because there's people that he can't, because he's an attorney, he can't, reveal what he saw. But he said he saw the client list. He's demanding that it be released. To think that there's no flight logs, that there's no client list, that the thousands of recordings that they had, because I found out for sure that he had cameras on every bedroom, recording everything, and all of a sudden all of it is gone. I mean, none of this makes sense.
Was it suicide? Was it something else? Is the full truth even public? No one seems to have solid answers. And that uncertainty is what fuels the bigger suspicion. If Epstein was silenced to prevent more exposure, what does that mean for others connected to him? Could similar outcomes happen again? Jaguar doesn't claim to have proof of everything, but she points out patterns: protection, delays, files held back for years. Powerful men continue business as usual. For a long time, she was dismissed. But now, federal investigations, document releases, and mounting public scrutiny are forcing people to look again. Maybe she wasn't screaming into the void. Maybe she was just early. And if the feds truly expose how deep the connections go, if Diddy really was operating inside the same elite protection system Epstein used, then this story could find some big names embroiled in its clutches. Lex Wexner is one name who has lately been facing such scrutiny, with the House Oversight Committee bringing him in for questioning. Curiously enough, however, Lex's lawyer has been so frustrated with his approach to the investigation that he threatened to take his life mid-meeting.
Billionaire Les Wexner, one of the closest known benefactors of Jeffrey Epstein, says he was, quote, naive, foolish, and gullible for trusting the late convicted offender. The 88-year-old testified before members of the House Oversight Committee in a closed-door deposition yesterday. He previously led the former parent company of Victoria's Secret and hired Epstein to manage his money in the mid-1980s. In his prepared opening statement, Wexner said he cut ties with Epstein shortly after his arrest in late 2006, but the latest release of Epstein files show the two stayed in touch past then. In her book, Selling Sexy, Victoria's Secret and the Unraveling of an American Icon, CBS News contributor and Puck fashion correspondent Lauren Sherman discusses Wexner's years-long relationship with Epstein, and Lauren joins us now. So tell us more about their relationship.
So Epstein was advising Wexner since the early 80s. He was introduced to him by the guys at Bear Stearns. He was vetted by him. He was a casual advisor. And then by the early 1990s, Wexner actually granted him power of attorney, which we all know is a very rare thing to do with a financial advisor. And he had that until 2007 when all these accusations and Epstein started to get into really big trouble. Wexner has tried to remove himself from the Epstein narrative, but the reality is he made Epstein very rich. And so the two men have been intertwined and have affected Wexner's legacy as an entrepreneur and a person who really built a lot of Ohio over the last 40 years.
An inventory. Then there was I hired a lady to be like the house manager who had run the U.S. Embassy in Rome, and she said, yeah, I know how to do this. And I said, well, why don't we keep inventories of stuff? And she said, well, yeah, I could do that. So she did that as kind of a puny example, but I wouldn't have had the idea. But then all the things were inventoried. That wasn't work for me or Jeffrey. It was just regularly done.
Answer the question. 5 words, okay? Answer the question.
Okay.
What's most interesting about all of this is that the Epstein and Diddy cover-ups aren't a knee-jerk reaction. It seems that whoever's pulling the strings was trying to protect themselves had this planned out a long time, because in July 2025, the U.S. Department of Justice fired a federal prosecutor who had worked on the cases involving Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Diddy. Her name was Maureen Comey, and there was no clear explanation or detailed statement. She was just gone.
Maureen Comey, the daughter of the ex-FBI director James Comey, has been fired from the U.S. Attorney's Office there in the Southern District of New York. Remember, she just worked on the Diddy trial. She also has worked on the Epstein case. The Associated Press has it as follows, that the DOJ has fired Maureen Comey. Now, she is the daughter, like I said, of James Comey. She was a prosecutor in the federal cases against Sean Diddy Combs and Jeffrey Epstein. That's according to two people familiar with the matter telling the AP that today. There was no specific reason, though, given for her firing from the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York. Now, her termination comes shortly after she prosecuted Combs, who was acquitted of trafficking and racketeering charges. The rapper was convicted of those lesser related offenses. Remember, he'll be sentenced in October. Now, the DOJ recently appeared to acknowledge the existence of an investigation into James Comey, though the basis for that inquiry is unclear. Remember, he was abruptly fired by President Trump in Trump's first term in 2017. So, this might be news to you. Maybe you don't even know. James Comey has a daughter who worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York on very high-profile cases, like the Sean Diddy Combs case, like the Epstein saga.
And after she was fired, she reportedly told former colleagues something chilling. Fear is the tool of a tyrant, wielded to suppress independent thought. This is something that is being heavily pointed out across America, particularly in political settings. It seems like there is a massive cover-up unfolding before our very eyes.
Newly released documents tonight say President Trump personally warned officials about Jeffrey Epstein decades ago. An FBI interview summary describing how President Trump called the then Palm Beach police chief to tell him, "Thank goodness you're stopping Jeffrey Epstein. Everyone has known he's been doing this." Adding people in New York knew Epstein was disgusting.
He kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his Mar-a-Lago club because Jeffrey Epstein was a creep, and that remains true. And this call, if it did happen, corroborates exactly what President Trump has said from the beginning.
But President Trump said this in 2019.
No, I had no idea. I had no idea.
The former Palm Beach police chief, Michael Ryder, not commenting to NBC News, but telling the Miami Herald the interview with Donald Trump happened in the summer of 2006. According to the document, the president told Ryder he was around Epstein once when teenagers were present, and Mr. Trump said he got the hell out of there, and added about Epstein's convicted co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell, she is evil, and to focus on her.
A prosecutor connected to Epstein, Maxwell, and Diddy gets removed. No public reason. And this happens while political pressure around the Epstein files is boiling over. This was particularly chilling because at the same time, media outlets like TMZ were reporting something explosive. Sources inside the White House were allegedly discussing the possibility of a presidential pardon for Diddy, almost as if they wanted him to walk free. Think about that. Diddy had been convicted on 2 federal counts under the Mann Act, transporting individuals across state lines for illegal purposes. That alone was already massive news, but insiders were saying that conversations were happening at high levels about possibly wiping that away. Then Trump publicly commented. He admitted he once got along with Diddy, said he thought he was a nice guy, but then he added that Diddy had been hostile toward him during the campaign, making it more difficult to consider a pardon. Dr. Umar has a rather interesting theory on which way this pardon could go.
With regard to Donald Trump's refusal to pardon Sean Puffy Combs or to commute the sentence of Sean Puffy Combs, because he don't have to pardon him, Art. He could just commute the sentence and say he served enough time, let him go home. You know, he's not doing that either. And I'm gonna tell you why. It's not necessarily due to the fact that he got an issue with Diddy. And we know Donald Trump is a racist. He's a bigot. He can't stand black people. We know that. He has a whole history of racism. His father was a racist. His grandfather, Frederick Trump, who immigrated to America from Germany, because Trump is a second generation American. Okay, if you don't count the first generation, the arriving generation. But his grandfather, who immigrated here, Frederick Trump, he couldn't stand black folks. He couldn't stand black folks. In fact, Donald Trump's father, I think, Art, either the father or the grandfather, but I think it's the father, Fred Trump. He was even allegedly, he has been accused of being sympathetic to the Ku Klux Klan. And we know for a fact that Donald Trump's father and possibly even grandfather, they were well known in New York for practicing residential discrimination against black people. And so was Donald Trump. So the grandfather, father, and Trump, all German. Donald Trump is a German, you know, by descent. They were all known to not like black people and discriminate against them in the leasing and purchasing of their real estate in New York. So you're talking about a white supremacist here.
Then there's Ghislaine Maxwell. Her brother recently came out to speak in her defense, claiming that his sister was being used as a scapegoat for the crimes of major names.
Substantial claims that Ghislaine has put forward as to why she did not receive a fair trial. Now, the upshot of that petition will be one of 3. It's denied. That's a shutout. An evidentiary hearing is ordered. The release of the Epstein files, which everyone has jumped on, with some famous people having been cut down, as it were, whether it's Mandelson or Prince or whatever, the former Prince or whatever. But within the millions of pages that have been released are some exceptionally important documents from Ghislaine's perspective, which entirely support her contention that she did not receive a fair trial. This isn't just us or Ghislaine trying to get sympathy. Obviously, she's convinced of her own innocence. And the issues that have come to light, be they the matter of the lying juror or the deliberate hiding of exculpatory information and evidence by the government, by the prosecutors. It is my view that Epstein was guilty. It is also my view that my sister is not guilty. That's to say, innocent of the charges that she was convicted of.
Right. I mean, okay, so the other people have been accused of things, and they have not necessarily been accused of the crime of which your sister has been accused, but people have asked questions about their association with this man, who they knew to be a convicted. So I cannot relitigate Ghislaine's trial because I don't have the knowledge and the information to do it. You can probably very easily shoot down every point I might raise. It's almost pointless trying to do it. But what I can say is she was for a very long time perhaps the closest friend and confidant to a convicted pedophile who trafficked. Is that in and of itself not something that greatly troubles you about your sister?
Look, she was in a relationship, with a physical relationship, as far as we know, with Epstein from roughly 1992 to about 97, 8, something in the later 90s. And the relationship then, that aspect of the relationship then changed, and it became a very much more professional relationship, where in fact she had substantial responsibilities for running, building, renovating, overseeing, and managing many substantial properties that he owned.
Some legal voices, including Epstein's former attorney Alan Dershowitz, publicly argued that Maxwell should be given immunity to testify before Congress, that she knows everything, that she made the travel arrangements, that she knows who flew where, and that's when the political chessboard really starts to show. If Maxwell talks freely, she could expose powerful people. If she makes a deal, she could protect powerful people. And if a deal looks transactional, would the public ever believe her testimony? It's unlikely. And what makes this entire ordeal even more intriguing is how Diddy is accused of doing the same thing. There are allegations that his freak-offs were merely a means of gathering blackmail material on some incredibly powerful people. So, a lot of people were asking why Donald Trump didn't pardon Diddy when rumors were flying that he might. Judge Joe Brown thinks it was strategic. He pointed out something most people weren't thinking about. Diddy's case, he said, hasn't fully worked its way through the system. If you pardon someone too early, you might cut off the chance to uncover bigger information.
If you pardon him, you may cut yourself off from finding out what else is going on. Like when Diddy first started coming under suspicion, I said, you know what? This sounds like somebody is upset because in 15 years of recordings with all of these freak parties going on, somebody is there that doesn't want that fact to come out or that allegation to come out, so somebody's being protected. So who's being protected, and what are we criminal law to prosecute somebody, persecute them so they can't say anything about somebody? That's why we have the Bill of Rights, so that doesn't happen. But it's completely flaunting the Bill of Rights, this so-called lawfare. So is that what's really behind this whole thing? So Diddy kind of put himself right in the midst of, there were some reprehensible characteristics of what he was doing. And it's not nice. The whole thing about being into what looked like pimping, I'll say that as an allegation, is not clean. So, law has this thing of if you want relief, make sure your hands are clean. So his hands aren't exactly clean of some of the things, even if the consequences are a little bit wrong in terms of what is trying to be accomplished. You don't go out and persecute somebody to protect somebody's reputation. And 15 years worth of recordings will have deterred a lot of people in the entertainment and communications industries who might have otherwise done some foul things to somebody, but they held back because they knew that somebody had damning evidence on them. So who else did you hear about at these large, several time a week freak parties? You see, you didn't hear too many names, did you?
What do you think is really going on? Let us know in the comments below.